If your prospects are ghosting you after you've just had a sales call with them and they stop responding to your follow-up emails, this video is going to help you solve that problem. Now, the important part of any business, especially an agency, is your ability to sell. But the unfortunate thing is 99% of beginners get into the agency model and have absolutely no idea how to sell. So in today's video, I'm going to break down step by step the same closing strategy I've used to not only close my first client, but close multiple high five-figure deals thereafter. So let's get right into it. Now, before you even think of getting on a sales call, it's very important that your systems are in place to actually host a sales call without any technical issues or bugs. Now, first things first, you need a Zoom Pro account. The main reason why you shouldn't stick to a free account is because of the meeting length. A free Zoom account only gives you about 45 minutes, and the worst part is, after 35 minutes into a call, both parties, or how many ever people there are in the call, will get a 10-minute countdown timer that starts and it's displayed at the top of the screen. Terrible impression if the business owner sees that an AI automation expert, and it's $16 a month. It's extremely important that you invest in this because first impressions really matter. The next thing is you want to make sure that you set up meeting reminders to ensure that your prospects actually arrive for the meeting. Now, when it comes to account details, you want to make sure that you change your display name on Zoom from Zoom user, which is the default setting, to your full name. And in addition to this, make sure that you also have a profile picture. This can be either a headshot of yourself or your agency logo. Either work, but do not leave it blank. And now the next thing I want to talk about is the waiting room function. This has to be turned on because you want to have the ability to let your client in when you are ready. You don't want to hop on the call and your prospect is sitting there waiting for you while you're still trying to get your demo notes in order and then set up everything around you. It's just very hectic. Now the next step in the preparation phase is personal presentation and background. You need to make sure that your environment screams professionalism, and this means that your background needs to be clean. This can either be just a white wall to limit distractions, or it could be very well set up office space with some tech books in the back, maybe some nice lighting, whatever you want in the background, just make sure it looks professional. You also want to avoid clutter, and you don't want your office to look like a bedroom. When it comes to setup, you also want to make sure that you have good quality lighting and a good microphone because that instantly gives a professional first impression to your prospect. And when it comes to good lighting, you can invest in a softbox light, or you can just take calls in a room with good natural lighting. Just make sure you're facing a window. Now, camera quality is the last focal point. You can either use your laptop camera if it's a good laptop, so a MacBook camera would work perfectly fine, or you can set up your iPhone as a camera, and there's a setting that allows you to do that inside of Zoom. So when you have more experience and your cash flow is coming in, you can also invest in a professional camera and plug it straight into your computer. Moving on to personal presentation. The way you dress and take care of yourself gives your prospect an insight on how you actually run your business. You cannot look like you just woke up and rolled out of bed to discuss whatever it is you're selling. You want to make sure that you're showered, you look fresh, you're well dressed, and this first impression matters a lot. And there's a study that says within the first 7 seconds, the prospect is already subconsciously deciding whether or not they want to work with you. So all of these visual aspects, having good lighting, good camera quality, good audio, and your personal presentation matters a lot. So make sure you're spot on. Now, the last part in step 2 is your internet connection. If your internet speed is an issue, it's something you have to deal with before getting on the call. The last thing you want is to be lagging when you're trying to showcase your services or your skill set, whatever it may be. And it's just going to throw off the rhythm completely of the call. And it's also going to present a lot of doubts in your prospect's mind about how professional you are. So if you face this issue, upgrade your internet speed, or you can move into a space that has good Wi-Fi. So remember, you're selling technology, your tech setup needs to be flawless. Phase 2 is sales call structure. Before jumping on a sales call, it's very imperative that you know the basics of the business that you're speaking to. So you want to prepare in a similar way that you would for any job interview. You need to gain as much understanding as possible about the ins and outs of their business and who you're having a call with, so that way you're able to assume as much familiarity as possible. And by knowing more about the business, you can come across as very prepared, therefore professional, and it also allows you to build up a lot of ammo for the call itself. There are 2 different types of sales call structures when you're running an agency, the 1-call close and the 2-call close. And I'll make something clear. Both of these structures work, and I use both of these currently and in the past, but there are some pros and cons to both. So the 1-call close is a much better structure for more seasoned agency owners because it requires you to be able to think on your feet and handle objections like it's second nature for you. And you need to be able to keep the energy high that the prospect has throughout the call. And if you're a beginner, you're probably going to be stuck on some objections. You probably don't know how to answer some questions of theirs. You're probably not as fully confident. And the biggest advantage of this call is that you can save time and you don't require the prospect to attend a second call. The other benefit is obviously you don't ever run the risk of the prospect jumping on the first call and then not attending the second call. I found that the 1-call close structure works best for agencies that don't have a lot of variation between clients. For example, if you have a standardized AI chatbot, for example, that you're selling to real estate agents and you're just churning it out, or you're working with an e-commerce business and it's a simple AI customer service automation, a one-call close in that scenario works very well because it's all productized, standardized. You know what you're selling and you'll be used to having certain objections come your way. But in my opinion, if you're a beginner agency owner, I suggest that you stay away from the one-call close unless you get a little bit more experience, especially since such a technical space in the industry often requires more explanations and demonstrations. As you would assume, the two-call close structure splits the structure of the sales call into two separate calls. The first call is focused on the discovery and really just understanding the needs of the prospect that you're speaking with, particularly around their current manual processes and the pain points artificial intelligence could solve. Now, the second call is when you take them through the details of whatever service or offer you have, more in detail, and potentially include any demos you might have to really seal the deal. And this is where you pitch them the service. This is going to allow you to understand the business fully after the first call and really be able to craft a solution, software, or a service that suits them to increase their likelihood of getting to a close. So you're able to crunch the numbers, assess their current tech stack, make sure their business is an actual fit for what you're offering, and that you can bring an offer to the table that will suit them. Now, as I mentioned, I prefer a two-call close over a one-call because it's beginner-friendly and it allows you to reset the energy and interest of the prospect before you're able to pitch your offer. And it allows for more time to prepare the actual pitch after getting all of the information necessary from the client during the first discovery call. And it also allows you to crunch up all the numbers the prospect reveals during the first call, and you can make sure that your offer actually matches their financial constraints. Now, if you look at this graph, you're going to see that as the time goes up, Now, if you actually look at the graph here, you're going to see that as time goes on, the energy of the prospect starts to drop. And because the energy of the prospect is dropping, their attention and interest in the call will also drop as well, which leads to a very low likelihood of closing the actual client. So the longer the sales call continues, the lower the energy of the client gets, decreasing the chances of a close. Now, this is especially true with AI solutions or anything tech related, because they require more explanation and demonstrations compared to any traditional agency model. So by having two calls, which are slightly shorter, it's allowing you to keep the interest higher by the end of the call, and it just makes sure that there's a higher likelihood of actually booking the next call and then closing the prospect in the second call. So allow yourself to have a quick break between the two calls. It really allows you to look back at your first call and truly take time to understand the client's needs around whatever it is you're selling, in this case, AI automation. And by understanding the client's current position and their needs, you're going to be able to tailor your service to their needs and have a higher chance of actually closing the client. So now that you're prepared to take sales calls and you understand what structure you're going to use, you need a framework that really dives deep into each part of a sales call and what the key outcomes are that you need from each part to eventually close that client in the end. Now, the layout of a sales call is as follows: rapport, pre-frame, discovery, transition, pitch, and then close. It would be extremely awkward to jump on a sales call with a prospect and get straight into talking about whatever it is you're trying to sell. The whole point of building rapport is to get to know the person, and in order to do so, you just have to break the ice for about 2 to 3 minutes, nothing more, nothing less. And you want to keep this extremely natural and try to avoid conversations like, how's the weather today, or where are you from, etc. So my advice is just ask a question or two about them, keep it very casual, and speak with confidence. The more confidence you speak with, the more trust you're going to build from your prospect onto yourself. My advice for this would be to just ask a question or two about them. And if you have no questions to ask, just go into ChatGPT and get a list of at least 20 questions to break the ice on a sales call, and it'll give you back some really good questions. Keep it casual and speak with confidence. Again, first impression counts. And the more you speak with confidence, they'll be able to tell that you've done this multiple times and you're not a beginner. And make sure the transition from that last sentence that you say into the next phase is very smooth. Pre-framing the call is very, very important. This is where you want to change your tone from casual, from the rapport phase, and get straight into business. And the reason this is so important is because this is the part of the call where you're going to take authority. This is where you get to show them that you've done this multiple times, and you get to show your confidence. Now, you see, in every single sales call, there's one person that leads by asking questions and the other follows by answering them. Now, as the AI automation expert trying to make a sale, it's very, very important that you hold the authority, and you need to lead in a way to keep the call on track. And if you fail to do so, the call will be interrupted continuously and it will inevitably go nowhere. The first key part is gaining authority. You want to take control of the call by outlining that you have implemented your service dozens of times and you typically know how these calls run. You want to let them know that you're going to be fully transparent whether your service can help them or not. But in order to do so, you need their full transparency and you're going to promise your full transparency in return. And if you can't help them out, you're obviously going to point them in the right direction. By doing this, the prospect is going to let you ask certain questions about their processes and pain points, and they will truthfully answer. Now, the next part in phase 2 is resisting the selling urge. Don't show any desperation because that's a trait that nobody will be attracted to, and this could not be more accurate in an AI agency sales call. If you, as the agency owner, sound desperate to close the prospect, they're going to start to question your credibility in the AI space. So start by pre-framing the call with a line like, if I believe that X service can help streamline your business at the end of the call, we can try to make you an offer, but if not, I will be more than happy to point you in the right direction. This puts the prospect at ease because they're actually hoping to get an AI solution, which leads to less objections and more transparency. Now, the last part is coming to an agreement. Make sure you agree on a yes or a no and agree to avoid any maybes. So being transparent about the reason for the call and agreeing to get an answer by the end of the call is going to allow you to avoid all objections. Next, we're moving on to phase 3, which is the discovery phase. Now, this phase is arguably the most important part of any agency because this is where you actually understand the client and the business itself. So that being said, this just goes a level deeper because this is where you start to highlight the business's pain points, their inefficiencies in your prospect's mind. There are 5 elements to an AI agency discovery call, and the first one is the current state. You're basically trying to understand where your prospect is right now, and in order to do so, you need to ask them a bunch of questions. What is it that they're selling? What's their price point? How do they currently fill their pipeline? Or in other words, how are they currently getting their clients? What are their profit margins? And you try to work out what their profit per month is. Then you move on to the future state. This is where you understand where the client is trying to get to. And this is basically usually around the fact that they're trying to save time, reduce manual work, scale their operations, or improve customer service. So in order to do so, you obviously have to ask a bunch of questions. And if you want the proper detailed guide that we use at Dr. AI, which is my company, you can click the link in the bio and you'll see a full discovery phase template. So make sure you check that out. And then once you ask them questions about where they're looking to get to, you want to ask them. So to reiterate, you want to understand how do they want their business to operate? What would their ideal customer experience look like? How much time are they trying to save per week? And what processes are they dreaming of that they wish were automated? What's their timeline, etc., etc. Then you move on to the gap phase. Once you have the current and future state, you automatically understand the gap because now you know where they are now, where they want to be, and you get to see the discrepancy in between both of them. So what is the gap between where they are and where they want to be? You need to know how many hours per week they're wasting, how much money they're losing, and how much growth they're missing out on because they're having difficulties scaling. Here you can also gauge whether your AI services can even fill this gap for the prospect and get them to achieve their efficiency goals. So you would understand the gap in their client acquisition strategy, help the prospect understand the gap in their strategy. Then you work out the difference between their current profit and their profit goal and challenge the client if they have no plan. Moving on to opportunity cost. This is where you basically double down on the fact that automation or whatever service you're selling is going to help the prospect, but it has to come from them. This is where psychologically they end up saying, okay, this is where I am now. I know that I want to get to a certain spot with my business, but there's a certain gap. And if I don't fix it, which is the opportunity cost, I'm still going to be stuck in my current state. So you want to double down on that and really trigger their pain here. So you want to make the client admit that your promised outcome would have steered them closer to their financial goals if they had started with you in the past. Then you want to make the client admit that they will struggle to get to their goals without your promised outcome. And the key here is that they must say it. They must acknowledge the fact that if they don't implement your services, they're going to stay stuck in their current state. And that's when they psychologically convince themselves and start to sell themselves. Then you move on to the doubt phase of the discovery call. The way you identify concerns about AI is by asking why they have never tried it in the past. So is this their first time hearing about AI in their industry? Maybe they've had concerns about AI being a little too complex. Maybe they're more of a traditional business and they hesitate to get into the technological side of things. And if you're able to bring these concerns to light, you can manage these objections and put the client at ease before pitching your service. So the next phase is transition, and the transition acts as a bridge between discovery and your AI automation pitch. So the transition is a way to show the prospect that you've listened to what they have to say about their current issues, problems, inefficiencies, whatever you want to call it, and you have all of the information you need from them about their automation needs. And your goal here is to get buy-in from them so that they want to hear what solutions you have to offer, and if it makes sense, they're going to be happy to make a decision by the end of the call. So ask them if there's anything you've missed during discovery about their current processes and whether there's any extra information they would like to share. You can now confirm to the prospect that you have a good understanding of their business and their current situation. And you're basically confirming with the prospect that AI can actually help them. So that's where you're confirming the fit once you've told them that we definitely think AI can help you reach your goals faster and save you a lot of time. Then you get permission to move forward. If they have any questions, you let them ask, and then you steer them towards allowing you to break down your offer from A through Z. My tip here is that you always want to give the A through Z option because 99% of prospects won't know what questions to ask about automation. And if you've done the discovery phase correctly, they still want to know more about how AI can solve their problems. So you could say something very simple along the lines like, cool, well, from here, it's entirely up to you. I don't know if you have a couple of questions to ask me about automation itself, or alternatively, I can walk you through my offer and I can show you how our AI systems can help you solve whatever pain point they were talking about in the discovery phase. So the goal here is to confirm with the prospect that after they gain clarity about your solutions and everything makes sense, that they're ready to make a decision today about implementing AI in their business. So this step right here is to let them talk about any last minute objections they might have, such as speaking to a third party decision maker or that they need to think about it, wherever it may be. Make sure that before you move on, all of these are good to go. So you have no objections from the prospect moving forward. Then you transition into your pitch. During the pitch, you want to break down your automation system down in the most simplest and most digestible way possible for your prospect. Now, the first part is your service system breakdown. You want to make sure that you say system and not service. And the reason is because business owners can view services as an expense, but they take a look at systems and they think it's an investment or a competitive advantage in their industry. And obviously, business owners are always drawn to investments and competitive advantages, and they often try to avoid expenses where they can. So by making your offer sound tangible and systematic, you can increase the perceived value and therefore your chances to close a deal skyrocket. And again, keep the explanation simple and digestible. You want to make sure that the prospect understands how the AI systems will work in their business. And remember something very important. Confused buyers never buy. And this is especially true with AI solutions that can seem very complex. Then you move on to the guarantees. If you have a guarantee around your implementation offer, well then of course you have to leverage it. And if you're able to show the prospect that you're bearing the risk of the automation not working and the risk on their end is very minimal, well then the offer becomes a no-brainer. Now this has a huge impact on your ability to close the client because the prospect ultimately has nothing to lose if they're trying to implement your offer. And this is especially powerful as many business owners are still very hesitant about AI, especially traditional businesses. Moving on to testimonials. Once you get a few automation clients, you always want to attempt to get some testimonials from them about their results. And if you have other businesses vouching for your automation offers, prospects feel more comfortable working with you because this proves that your solutions actually work. And if the automation has worked for someone else in their industry, why would it not work for them? So you gotta make that connection with them. So testimonials are one of the reasons that agency sales become easier over time because the more credibility you have around successful AI audits, implementations, workflows, the easier it is to gain their trust. And the last part here is the pricing breakdown. Again, we're going to work with the yes, no, maybe frame, and you have to confirm that there are no unforeseen roadblocks to get to the close. This is where you need to use your authority. You need to state your price for the automation setup and monthly retainers with a lot of confidence. You need to state your automation prices with full authority and use the silence to your advantage. And this is something I've learned with a lot of trial and error. Regardless of your prospect's reaction, make sure that they're the ones that talk first. This just shows a lot of authority, like I said, and it shows that you're confident that the price you charge for your service is 100% worth it. Then you move on to closing the actual deal. So now you have to get the client to agree on a close. Get the prospect to agree that they're happy with everything, and your goal here is to get a solid yes. And the next part is sending the contract and invoice. So make sure that your automation contracts and invoices are ready to go before the call, and as soon as they agree to the implementation, you can send over the contract and invoice. I like to use PandaDoc because the cool part about that software is once a client or a prospect signs the deal or the contract, they're prompted to pay, and I connect my PandaDoc to my Stripe account. So that's something you should have set up before the call. And as soon as you get the yes, you send them the contract and then give them a few minutes to read the contract and then make the payment. Then you move on to collecting the payment on the call. So you always want to make sure or aim to collect the payment on the call. And the payment you want to collect is the full first month and its fee for the automation that you're selling. But if there's any sort of confusion regarding the contract terms, just take a deposit and you should be able to move forward. And a deposit will show that the client is 100% on board with the services, because if you allow a prospect to get off the call without paying for the services, there's nothing stopping them from ghosting you afterwards. And then you go into the onboarding phase. Once they've paid for the automation or whatever service it is, you want to send them the AI onboarding funnel and briefly explain the implementation process so that the client understands what the automation onboarding process includes. Make sure that you state that if there are any issues with onboarding or questions about implementation, you and your team will be happy to assist. If you guys want the onboarding funnel that I use, you can click the link in the description and it'll take you to a Google Doc and it'll show you my full-on funnel. Now I'll end this video by saying every sales call you don't close is just another opportunity for you to gain clarity on what you can do better next time, whether it be refining your offer, handling objections a little bit better, or even building proper rapport with your client. Whatever it may be, think of it as a learning curve, and with trial and error, you will also close a lot of clients. If you're able to implement all of these steps and continue to improve them as you go, there's no reason why you won't hit a $10,000 per month agency by the end of this year. So as always, I hope you guys enjoyed this sales guide. I'm going to go ahead and drop all the links to the resources in the description. Rewatch this video and leave a comment on what other topics you want me to cover, and I'll see you in the next video.